For many years, the leaders of the Galactic Concord had laughed at Earth. To them, humanity was just another new species crawling up from a small blue planet, trying to find its place among giants. The oldest empires, like the Varnak Dominion and the Sheltec Alliance, had ruled the stars for thousands of years. They had crushed rebellions, silenced entire civilizations, and expanded their borders without mercy. So when Earth sent its first few messages to the galaxy, polite, respectful, carefully worded requests for peace and mutual cooperation, the great powers barely noticed. And when Earth followed up with warnings to leave its space untouched and its people alone, the message was seen as little more than noise. The warning had no aggressive tone, no threats, no demand for power. It simply said, "Please respect our borders. Do not interfere with human development. Do not test our resolve." It sounded almost too calm, too soft, and the galaxy had no room for softness. The Varnak officials laughed in their war chambers, their long claws tapping against strategy maps. They believed the humans were just trying to sound important. To them, peace talks were the language of the weak. And so the Concord, one by one, ignored Earth's message, some even mocking it publicly on open comms. The Sheltec ambassador called it a letter from children pretending to be warriors. But while the galaxy dismissed Earth, something strange was happening on the human side. Earth didn't send another message. Earth didn't protest or complain. It just went quiet. There were no more broadcasts, no more attempts to gain allies, no reactions to insults or dismissals. In the silence, deep beneath the surface of Earth, enormous machines were working day and night. Spaceports in the asteroid belt grew in size. Lunar outposts expanded with shield generators that didn't match any known human technology. And far out in the dark corners of the solar system, massive shadows began to drift ships without names, without signals, without noise. Humanity had stopped talking, not because it was afraid, but because it had said enough. Earth had sent its warning, and now it was watching, waiting, calculating. The galaxy, however, took the silence as proof of weakness. The mighty powers believed humans had been scared into submission. In their arrogance, they didn't consider that maybe the warning had been real. Maybe it was never a bluff. And, as the Varnak Dominion began preparing a small disciplinary strike to put Earth in its place, they didn't know that every move was already being tracked by satellites too small to see and too smart to detect. They didn't know that Earth had already prepared to list names of empires, names of fleets, names of leaders, and stored them in the command systems of ships that had never been seen by alien eyes. The warning had been sent not as a threat, but as a courtesy. A final chance. A soft voice before the storm. But the galaxy didn't listen. And now, the silence was about to end. The decision to strike Earth's moon was made inside the Varnak Dominion's high war chamber without much thought, as if it were just another routine operation. The Varnak leaders had grown tired of Earth's silence, taking it as disrespect rather than patience, and believed a small show of force would remind humanity of its place. So they chose the moon, a symbol of Earth's space expansion and a key outpost used for research, communication, and defense. The Dominion sent one of its mid-tier assault cruisers, the Varkalos, with a team of elite soldiers and heavy plasma cannons. It was not a full-scale invasion, but it was enough to damage the base and send a message. The attack began without warning, in the silence of space. Earth's lunar station, known as Sentinel Base, had no idea a hostile ship was approaching. In seconds, its outer defenses were struck with precision. The communication towers were melted down by direct energy blasts, and the energy shields that had been quietly upgraded over the years flickered under the pressure. Inside the base, alarms screamed, and human engineers and officers rushed to their stations, their faces tight with fear and confusion. No declaration of war had been made. No warning was given. The moon, Earth's closest companion in space, was under attack and Earth itself remained untouched. The Varnak ship didn't bother communicating. It simply continued firing until the upper structure of the base was heavily damaged, then pulled back, satisfied. To the Dominion, the mission was a success. It would be reported as a simple act of discipline, a reminder to Earth that its soft words and quiet attitude would not be tolerated forever. But what the Varnak didn't realize was that in attacking the moon, they had crossed the line humanity had drawn in silence. Earth did not respond with panic or emotional speeches. In fact, there were no public announcements at all. Governments around the world locked into emergency meetings. Military command centers went dark. Civilian networks remained calm, as though nothing had happened. But in orbit, hidden behind layers of classified systems, Earth's Space Defense Network was activated fully for the first time. The world's most advanced artificial intelligence systems, once created to calculate interstellar trade routes and climate change patterns, were now repurposed to track enemy movements, scan for weaknesses, and coordinate retaliation. The damage to Sentinel Base was quickly assessed. Only a few lives were lost, but that didn't matter because now it wasn't about a base. It was about the message that had been ignored. The attack had proven one thing clearly: the galaxy no longer saw Earth as a voice worth hearing. That mistake would now cost them. Humanity had been preparing for years, not just in weapons, but in strategies, silence, and shadows. The Ghost Fleet, a group of ships that had no official existence, had been built far beyond the moon, hidden among asteroids and icy moons. These ships didn't carry flags or names. They carried only orders. They didn't announce themselves on radar. They moved with the cold logic of machines, guided by the resolve of human leaders who'd watched the galaxy's arrogance grow unchecked. The attack on the moon was not the beginning of a war. It was the last straw. Earth would not scream. It would not beg. It would simply act. And even as the Varnak Empire celebrated its small victory, even as their fleets returned to their stations believing the humans would take weeks to respond, the countdown had already begun. The retaliation would not be loud. It would not be seen until it was far too late. And in the cold silence of space, somewhere between Mars and the outer rim of the solar system, the first human ship of the Ghost Fleet began to move. Across the cold and endless black of space, they moved like shadows, silent and unseen, their presence hidden behind deep space distortions and advanced cloaking fields that no alien race had ever encountered before. The Ghost Fleet was not made for show or intimidation. It was made for one purpose only: to strike with precision and vanish before the enemy even realized what had happened. Dozens of sleek, dark warships glided together in perfect silence, each shaped for speed, stealth, and destruction, their hulls absorbing light and energy to stay invisible even at close range. Unlike the bulky, glowing ships of the Varnak and the grand floating cities of the Sheltec, the human vessels were cold, sharp, and unannounced, designed not to impress, but to disappear. Every ship was powered by fusion cores enhanced with alien tech once reverse-engineered from forgotten relics, and every weapon on board had been tested in deep underground labs away from the spying eyes of the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet had never been seen, never. Used only when peace was no longer an option. The fleet received the order without emotion. No broadcasts were made. No threats were sent. The ships merely changed course. Their target, a major Varnak command outpost near the edge of the Andros Nebula, one of the galaxy's key tactical zones. This base controlled 3 nearby star systems and was used as a refueling point for Varnak fleets well-defended, well-staffed, and surrounded by heavy patrols. But none of that mattered to the Ghost Fleet. The attack began without sound, without light. The Varnak patrols vanished in seconds, their systems fried by invisible EMP blasts from long range. Before anyone inside the base could even raise an alert, their communications went dead, their security grids failed, and their atmosphere shields dropped. In a matter of moments, the human fleet had cut them off from the galaxy. What followed was swift, surgical destruction. No ships were spared, no fighters launched in time. Human drones slipped through vents and weak points in the structure, disabling defense systems and planting charges with mechanical speed. The entire base, which had taken decades to build, fell in under 9 minutes. The humans didn't take prisoners, but they didn't torture or humiliate either. They simply left behind a message, burned into the metal of the command chamber wall. This was your first and last mistake. The Ghost Fleet then vanished as quickly as it had arrived. When Varnak reinforcements finally reached the smoking remains of the outpost, they found nothing, no signs of human ships, no readable data, no survivors who could explain how such a powerful base had been destroyed so fast. Panic began to spread across the Varnak leadership. They had expected a small diplomatic protest, maybe an angry message or a poorly planned counterattack. What they got instead was a silent execution of one of their strongest military assets. And still, Earth said nothing. No human leader appeared on the galactic broadcast. No interviews, no declarations, no drama. Earth's silence had become more terrifying than any war cry, because now the galaxy realized something far more dangerous. Humans were not just reacting, they had been prepared for this. Every empire that had laughed before now began reviewing its defenses, digging through reports, and trying to find anything that explained what had just happened. But there were no answers. The humans had kept their strength hidden for so long that even the most powerful AI prediction systems could not understand their moves. What frightened the Varnak Dominion most was that the Ghost Fleet hadn't gone for a symbolic target they had struck where it hurt. They had chosen a command hub deep in Varnak space, showing not only their reach but their accuracy. If they could do that without warning, what else were they capable of? How many ships did they really have? Was Earth still silent because it was planning more? The galaxy, once proud and loud, had suddenly gone quiet. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Ghost Fleet waited again, not out of fear, but because they knew the next move would not be theirs to make. It would be the galaxy's choice now: ignore the warning again, or finally listen before something even worse arrived. The Varnak Dominion, once proud and arrogant, sat in stunned silence as the ashes of its fallen outpost near the Andros Nebula drifted through space. The message burned into its walls, echoing louder than any war speech. Panic spread behind closed doors, while their leaders argued and shouted in secret war rooms, still unable to understand how the humans had struck so deep, so clean, and so silently. But while they debated, the Ghost Fleet moved again, this time not to destroy, but to send a message the entire galaxy could see and never forget. Their target was not a hidden base or a strategic station. It was a Varnak colony world called Kuranes, known for its military academies and supply lines, a planet full of symbols of Varnak pride. The humans knew exactly what they were doing. Kuranes had no real defenses, because no one expected a strike there, not so soon, and not from Earth. The Ghost Fleet approached under cover of the planet's twin moons, splitting into groups and descending through the atmosphere like shadows. They did not attack civilians. They didn't need to. Their mission was focused, cold, and terrifying in its precision. One by one, the Varnak training centers, supply depots, and leadership buildings were set on fire, not with bombs, but with silent energy pulses that melted structures from the inside. Entire towers collapsed in perfect timing, creating a pattern visible from space. When Varnak rescue forces arrived, too late once again, they looked down from orbit and saw something that froze their blood. The burning ruins of their proud institutions had been arranged into two massive words, scorched into the planet's surface. WEWRNEDYU. The message wasn't spoken, and no human ship remained to explain. Every single attacker had vanished without a trace, just like before. But this time, the humans had left something behind: small black drones hovering silently in the sky, each one projecting the final moments of the attack on repeat. These images were picked up by local satellites and spread like wildfire across the galactic networks, and within hours, every major empire, alliance, and trade council had seen the footage. The strikes were clean, brutal, and carried out with such control that not a single unnecessary life was taken. Even those who hated Earth couldn't help but respect the power and planning behind it. It was not madness. It was not revenge. It was discipline. The galaxy had never seen war like this. Until now, warfare had been about big fleets, loud speeches, and long battles. But Earth fought like a ghost, appearing only when needed, striking without emotion, and disappearing without leaving any clues. The flames on Kuranes were not just physical, they were symbolic, and they lit up the fears of every galactic leader who had once considered Earth too weak or too kind to stand in a real war. Now they realized Earth had never been weak. It had just been waiting, watching, and preparing for a moment exactly like this. Those who had dismissed humanity now looked to the stars with growing dread, wondering how many other ghost fleets existed, how many systems had already been mapped by Earth's silent forces, and how close their own worlds were to becoming the next warning. And still, Earth remained quiet. There were no broadcasts claiming responsibility. There were no demands or threats. Only silence. That silence spoke louder than any declaration, because now every species understood that Earth had shifted from diplomacy to action, and that it would not stop until the message was heard loud and clear: respect us or face the consequences. The flames of Karanis burned for weeks, and though rescue efforts rebuilt what they could, nothing could erase the fear. It wasn't just the destruction, it was the knowledge that Earth had delivered a message without needing to speak. The humans didn't want war, but they wouldn't run from it either. And now, with the galaxy finally listening, everyone wondered the same thing: what would Earth do next if this warning still went unheard? After the flames of Karanis faded into smoke and silence, the galaxy found itself in a strange and uncomfortable place, a place where Earth was no longer mocked, feared in the shadows, or treated like an outsider, but instead watched with deep respect and quiet fear. The message had been delivered, and it was now burned into the minds of every leader, commander, and strategist across space. The Varnak Dominion, once loud and proud, had gone silent, their fleets retreating to core worlds, their generals avoiding public appearances, and their citizens whispering in fear that the humans might strike again. In meetings of the Great Councils, where Earth once stood at the back of the room, ignored or talked over, now every word from a human representative was met with focused attention. No one interrupted. No one rolled their eyes. Every species knew now that Earth could speak through fire, and they would rather hear words than suffer silence. Yet Earth spoke little. That silence became its greatest weapon. Without firing another shot, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. Trade routes that once bypassed Earth now sought its approval. Treaties were rewritten, suddenly offering Earth the respect it had been denied for decades. Old enemies turned careful, and old allies turned cautious. No one knew how many ghost fleets were still hidden or how far human technology had advanced in the shadows of peace. But everyone knew one thing: if Earth had wanted to destroy more, it could have, and it didn't. That choice terrified them more than any weapon. It showed control, precision, purpose, the kind of discipline only a true power could hold. Some believed Earth was preparing for something bigger, while others feared that the ghost fleets were already watching from orbit, waiting for the next reason to strike. Spies were sent to Earth, but none returned. Surveillance probes vanished without a signal. The humans had built something far more dangerous than superweapons. They had built mystery, and mystery was far more powerful than fear alone. Even the Varnak, after centuries of aggression, requested private talks with Earth. They denied it in public, of course, but their ships slowed their patrols near human systems, and their propaganda broadcasts grew strangely quiet. The galaxy had seen giants fall before, but never like this, never so silently, never without a single full-scale war. Earth had not demanded surrender. It had simply earned fear, not through cruelty, but through cold precision and untouchable strategy. Across neutral worlds, artists painted ghostly human ships as legends, children played games pretending to be captains of the invisible fleet, and scientists obsessed over how such a once young species had mastered such ancient war. But in Earth's capital, things were calm. The humans did not celebrate. There were no parades, no announcements of victory. To them, this was not glory. It was necessity. They had sent the warnings, and they had been ignored. Now the galaxy listened, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Behind the quiet walls of Earth's Defense Council, leaders reviewed data, updated protocols, and spoke with the same careful tone they had used before the Ghost Fleet ever moved. This wasn't revenge. It was survival. Earth had always known it was different. Fragile, yet persistent. Small, yet unpredictable. And that unpredictability had now become its greatest strength. The galaxy could no longer guess what humans would do, and so it gave them space. It gave them respect. But under that respect, hidden in silence, there lived a deep, uneasy fear, because now every empire, every powerful race, and every council knew that the humans were not just part of the galaxy. They were a force within it. A force that didn't seek control, but could never be controlled. Peace returned, but it was no longer the peace of ignorance. It was the peace of caution, of watching every move Earth made and wondering if a single mistake would wake the Ghost Fleet once more. And so, the stars grew quieter, not because the war was won, but because the galaxy had finally realized something it should have known all along. Earth may be kind, patient, and polite, but when it speaks through fire, the wise listen. The message had been heard. The lesson would never be forgotten.